Take the left turn and not proud of the stage, Jules Lund style. A couple of things I wanted to say up front to let you know I'm a last minute call up. I'm a ring in. Our Chief Commercial Officer was going to be here, Emma Jane Owens. She succumbed to the thermonuclear flu that Kim from Think TV powered her way through. So you've got me. Anyway, one other thing I wanted to let you know, Simon from Deloitte covered a lot of the things I'm going to be speaking about because I'm going to be talking about voice. And the other thing, being from the Australian Radio Network, you'd expect that I'd be talking to you all about radio. You'd expect to hear about icy cold cans of Coke and secret sound and $1 million minutes and beat the bomb. But what I'm going to be taking you through is more so audio in general and audio more broadly. And the fact that, as the animation begins, and the fact that audio is everywhere and we're all listening. How devices, services, platforms are driving consumer appetite for audio, as Simon told you before. The confidence in audio continues to build. So investment in audio is growing, which I'll take you through. And broadcast radio, that's the icy cold cans of Coke, are leading the charge. Future is looking extremely bright. You heard it from Simon, but it's voice that's changing the world. So you go back a year or two, and you can see that one of the best-selling electronic devices was headphones, which probably was a sign of something big. So audio consumption continues to grow, and if you look at some of these numbers here, streaming now makes up 11% of all audio time. Podcasting, you would have heard Sam Hegg before telling us that he was listening to one on the way in, which is a fantastic endorsement. So podcasting is now 13% of listening, and that's on average 5 podcasts a week. And broadcast radio makes up 88% of the population. 9 out of 10 Australians are listening to broadcast radio every week. Look, it's not new news, but we all know that our media choices have expanded. That's just a snippet of what we're engaging with on a daily basis. But if you look at that considerable time that we're spending with audio every day, so 3 hours and 20 minutes that we are spending with audio. Smartphones, reducing cost of internet have of course contributed to the rise of streaming services like Spotify and ARN's own iHeartRadio, and now that readily accessible library, or the readily accessible libraries of podcast content that we have at our fingertips. So iHeartRadio, which is us, we have a local and international library of podcasts, which is now the largest in Australia. So we've seen listening hours of podcasts grow by 300% over the last 6 months. And total iHeartRadio listening hours for linear radio was up 75% since last year. So Australians are loving audio. It's experiencing somewhat of a renaissance. You would have heard that from newspapers before, but it is primarily because the audio platforms work so well in the multitasking world that we live in. So we're spending close to 3.5 hours every day listening to audio, but it's not all about sexy streaming services. It's not all about podcasts. In fact, it's not even about them. 65% of audio time is spent with live radio. So it's still so relevant and it's still so voraciously consumed after all these years. And why is it that you think? Well, you know, coming here today, it took you a while to get here. I'm sure, half the audience took over half an hour in their car. So population growth, and we'll look at that later, is outstripping infrastructure. There's more traffic, there's more time spent in cars, there's longer commutes, so the radio is going to be on. And then it's the intrinsic happiness and connection that live radio brings. Those feelings of being uplifted when I listen to radio. You look at a GfK study from Feb this year, found that 70% of Australians listen to radio because it improves their mood and it makes them laugh. 85% of radio listeners agree that it entertains them. 78% of listeners agree it keeps them up to date. And 71% of radio listeners agree that it keeps them company. A study that we conducted about 18 months ago showed that people tune in to escape, to re-energise and to get into a positive and happy place. And you would have heard the word trust before from newspapers, also a massive area that brings people to radio. We'll talk about talent because that positive and happy place is driven by people like this. And it all starts with chemistry between high-profile talent. Moving from this side over, Kyle and Jackie O have dominated the radioscape in Sydney for the last 10 years. They have an amazing chemistry. Love them or hate them, Sydney loves them. Melbourne, Jason PJ, brand new for breakfast, but again, an amazing chemistry that they brought over from a #1 rating show in New Zealand. And the guy on the end is Christian O'Connell, again, dominated the London airwaves. We've brought him over to Melbourne, and he's already won over listeners in Melbourne. The connection continues throughout the day with a station like Gold, where you've got energised music that people can relate to, which clearly rang true for the last radio survey where Gold was #1 FM station. So, enough bang on about our stations. Ultimately, listeners tune into radio to feel better about the world. They develop a deep and emotional connection to the talent and the shows, and that's something that no other media does than radio can do. So live radio is 65% of all audio, and radio audiences are still growing. If you look at this slide here, you can see that population growth has gone up 16% over the last 10 years. Radio audience growth has gone up 18%. So great to see that radio listenership is outstripping population growth. Confidence in the investment continues. So just a quick reference to exactly how commercial radio is one of only a handful of media predicted to be in growth by 2021, according to PwC, along with subscription TV, digital, gaming, as well as out of home. And SMI also shows that confidence has continued this year, with fin year to date, radio being up 6.1%, and in the March quarter, radio up close to 8%. This research from Kantar showed radio is as good as TV at building awareness, it's as good as TV at generating motivation, and it's better than TV, that one over there, 21% better in fact, at giving a brand identity through emotional and functional attributes. So audio's booming, confidence continues to grow. You already heard this from Simon before, but I'm going to tell you again. You've got smart speakers like Amazon Echo and Google Home exploding onto the scene, with over 56 million units expected to be shipped from the US this year. We can expect households to continue getting smarter as voice and not visual becomes more prevalent. We also have Google Home sitting at our dining table, as Simon did before, and questions are asked of it every single night. Smart speaker penetration will be 55% by 2022. 50% of all searches will be voice searches by 2020, which is under 18 months away, and about 30% of searches will be done without a screen by then as well. So the prospect of changing the way we interact through voice is hugely exciting for everyone. And it's something that we need to start preparing for, again, as Simon took us through before, especially as many brands, as we know, don't have an audio strategy. So in the same way as they have a visual one, yet voice could be set to become the primary access point online for people in the home and content overall. So to wrap all that up, as I sail past my allocated 5 minutes, audio is everywhere and people are listening. The appetite for all things audio is showing no signs of abating. Streaming services and podcasts, and as I said for ARN, that's iHeartRadio, are growing in terms of both downloads and usage, and with scale becomes the opportunity for personalisation and even greater relevance for audiences and brands. And equally and importantly, broadcast radio is still 2/3 of all listening in the country because it's as energised and relevant and connected as audience as ever before. Audience is growing and investment is growing with it. Commercial radio is healthy and effective for both national and local advertisers, both metro and regional. And the Kantar study that I talked about before showed just how effective radio is at delivering a positive return on investment. Smart speaker adoption is growing at a faster rate than the early days of smartphones, and that's great because new audio platforms are increasing the consumption of radio. But brands and advertisers, as I touched on, do need to consider how they approach their audio strategy and how to build that audio identity in the new world. So that is it from me. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. And of course, make sure you listen to Gold 104 tomorrow from 6 to 6 for your chance to win on Gold 10K.